Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Omar Khalid. But today is the 26th of June 2025 and these are the stories that we'll try to highlight during the course of the show. We'll begin with the Iran-Israel, Iran-U.S. conflict and of course the peace that is still retaining between Iran and Israel, and the fact that Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei says that the US has gained no achievement from this war. He was of course posting this on X. President Donald Trump also says the US and Iranian officials will be talking next week as Iran's Guardian Council suspends cooperation with the UN's IAEA. How is that also going to bode as far as the NPT and Iran is concerned is something that we will be waiting to see. This is going to be our first story. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the SCO Defense Ministers meeting that was held in Shanghai. We'll be talking about how India refused to sign the communique, how India wanted desperately that Pakistan be added as the perpetrator behind Pahalgam, and of course none of the countries sided with the India's point of view. This will be, and other parts of the SCO Defense Ministers meeting will also be discussed in our second story. Then, ladies and gentlemen, in our third story we will be talking about India and how it is pressing Bangladesh on a review of the Ganges Treaty that was signed way back in the 1990s, and now in 2026 it's going to expire, and now India wants to push new conditionalities so that it can gain more and more the water that is flowing into Bangladesh. Will it happen eventually? Is this a repeat of the putting in abeyance of the Indus Water Treaty? This is what we will discuss in our third story. Our fourth story concerns climate change and Pakistan. Now, whether it be the GLOF, we all know what the GLOF is, glacial lake outburst flood, how that could affect Pakistan, because of course the monsoon season is upon us, and with the heat, GLOFs are a phenomenon that Pakistan has encountered many a times in the past few years as well. On top of that, the Ministry of Climate Change has agreed to a 10 billion rupees green financing deal to boost the green entrepreneurship. How important is that for Pakistan as well? We'll be highlighting that in our fourth story. And finally, we'll be talking about Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, who is going to be married in Venice. But there are a lot of protests that are happening as far as this wedding is concerned, and how certain people who have the power, who have the money, can take over even places such as Venice. They say this shows a certain inequality amongst different strata of people, and this is what is really putting a lot of question marks on all the tourists that are also visiting Venice. This is going to be our final story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns Iran talks. Now, Donald Trump says that the US and Iran are going to sit down for talks. If you remember well, after the NATO summit, or while addressing the NATO summit, Donald Trump had said exactly that with the defense secretary, that he was willing to have talks with any country that was wanting to have talks, and that included Iran. And he said we would, in fact the defense secretary said that they would prefer that Iran has direct talks with the US instead of having an intermediary. And of course maybe he was referring to the European Union or maybe some other intermediary. Nevertheless, this leads to the question how important this meeting next week, this probable meeting between the US and Iranian side is going to be. We've been joined by Ambassador Naela Chohan, former ambassador. Thank you very much, ma'am, to have joined us. President Trump, ma'am, says he doesn't care whether or not there is a nuclear agreement with Iran or not. Iran has already, said that it wants to disassociate itself with the IAEA and because of it being a signatory of the NPT. How should this ambiguous stance of Donald Trump, I'm coming back to his stance, be interpreted? Is it strategic posturing because he wants an enhanced relationship with Iran, or a direct relationship with Iran, or is it abandonment of the routine diplomacy?
It's all of that.
Okay.
Because basically you have raised 2-3 points. The first thing is that Mr. Trump doesn't like to be conventional. So his offer is in an unconventional way. He said what was important was that there was ceasefire, whether there was agreement or not. And that was between Iran and Israel. Long as Israel behaves itself and Iran doesn't violate the ceasefire, he was all right with it. Then came the nuclear conversation or dialogue. That I think there's a lot of ambiguity around it, because this would be JCPOA 2, right? This would be entirely different from JCPOA 1. And what will be the dynamics, it hasn't been defined yet. But Iran has not confirmed if they wish to go into that talk until there is clarity. As regards Iran thinking of getting out of NPT, IAEA, that is different. That is because Iran felt betrayed by IAEA. IAEA has been monitoring Iran's nuclear assets. It was one of the most monitored country by the IAEA, and yet in the report they had this ambiguity which gave space for the West to interpret as though they are at the threshold of going nuclear, and therefore it was used as pretext by Netanyahu to have preemptive attack.
All right.
So they thought that if they get out of the NPT, because until now they were compliant, so they were being monitored.
Yes.
If they get out of the NPT, then they are not obliged to invite any monitors to see what they are doing, and they can do whatever they like, because there is no compulsion on them, there is no threshold to limitation for them. That will be a bigger threat for the West, because already they don't know what really happened with this bombardment they did in Natanz and in Isfahan.
Things are also very ambiguous or unclear as to what, because we had the CNN report that came out that said that the damage has been done, but it's not sufficient for the complete nuclear arsenal or nuclear capabilities of Iran to be completely destroyed. And of course, that was negated by Donald Trump, who time and again said it was obliterated. All of that was obliterated. Yeah. This was a keyword that he used. Coming back to the talks, Ambassador Naela Chohan, with these talks that are expected to happen next week, quote unquote, what could be the possible agenda? Because for the moment we don't know what the agenda could be. You said maybe nuclear talks could be the agenda, JCPOA 2 could be the agenda, but Donald Trump is downplaying the importance of a nuclear deal. What is on his mind in your point of view? If a nuclear deal is not going to be on the agenda, what could be?
My dear sir, I am not a magician to know what is in the mind of
no,
Mr.
but
Donald
being a
Trump.
diplomat, you could maybe
yes,
have an idea.
From what the idea one is getting is, Mr. Trump never lets you know what is in his mind, because what he says is not what he does, and what he does is not what he says. So, there's a lot of ambiguity in that, but I think basically he wants peace.
Okay.
He does not want to get embroiled in these wars. He was very angry with Israel for violating the ceasefire, and he said so. He said, I'm very angry with Israel. And yet Israel is claiming victory, Iran is claiming victory. Everybody, it's a win-win for everybody.
True.
And yet you don't know what really happened and what would be the new dynamics. So it's a very amorphous situation.
Where does that leave Israel?
Israel actually was very clever. I think it had never taken Bashan like this before. So if Iran had continued, Israel would have been obliterated.
Right.
So they begged for US involvement to stop this beating. But Israel has a bigger agenda. They want that greater Middle East, Israel. That greater Israel agenda is always there. So this ceasefire, I'm not sure how durable it will be.
All right. The Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei congratulates the country's armed forces and says, quote unquote, the US bases could be attacked again in case of future threats. Is this a threat directly to the US also to retain themselves or not to get involved again in any future conflict, or is there more meaning to it than what comes to the eye?
Well, firstly, this statement shows that Iran has not been obliterated. Its facilities have not been obliterated. There is a confidence in Imam Khamenei's statement, and they are also deterring US to deter Israel, because Israel has been violating the ceasefire, whether there was an agreement or not. There was a ceasefire and Israel has been violating that. So, Mr. Khamenei has said that if this situation doesn't settle, Iran, if with back against the wall, can hit United States interests. Already they had hit in Qatar, the American base there. But the interesting thing is that it is said, I don't know how authentic it is, that they were already informed that this attack will take place. So, all the soldiers and everything was removed from there. So, it was like a face saving more than actual damage to United States, and that is why he thanked that there was no loss of life there.
All right, all
but
right.
if it gets intense, then there might be lives lost also.
The US Secretary of State at the NATO summit says that a key conversion facility in Iran was destroyed, yet the preliminary assessments, as we have discussed a little bit before, suggest otherwise. What is this contradiction also within reports that are coming out of New York Times, of CNN, that Donald Trump calls, what he calls, I mean, I don't want to go in there, about the internal narrative that is present within the US administration, especially following their attack in Iran?
Well, that is internal dynamics of United States. The politics within United States of America, the MAGA people, Make America Great Again.
Yes.
They were the people who were, quite a few, against US involvement in this war against Iran. So, Mr. Trump did it. It is not really known, confirmed by Iran, the level of damage that has been caused. His critics are utilizing that to kind of put him down, which he refuses. So, it really depends the dynamics inside United States of America.
So that I mean a lot is at play, internal politics within the US, its relationships with other countries, and of course its relationship with Israel, and its desired relationship with Iran. Iranian President Naela Chohan Sahiba, Masoud Pezeshkian, says that Israel failed in its goals: nuclear sabotage, unrest, and facility destruction. He narrated 3 points. How might this narrative that is being pushed by Mr. Pezeshkian influence Iran's regional standing post ceasefire with Israel?
Well, Iran's regional standing obviously has gone high, because there was not a single country that could take on Israel, because Israel had created a lot of myth around itself. The dome of defense, the invincibility of its defense forces, the IDF, this, that and the other. But Iranian missiles did break the dome of defense. The Iranian missiles and drones did attack Tel Aviv, Haifa, Hebron. So, that myth has been shattered. So, actually Israel is on a very weak wicket, and Iran has come up as a country, and Mr. Trump also said that they really took beating. They really took a hard beating, and yet they are standing, and not only standing but also threatening. So, obviously the West miscalculated their actual ability to rebut. The agenda they were talking about was regime change and of destroying their nuclear, facilities. But both these agendas seem to have not achieved, because regime change is unlikely right now. The whole nation of Iran is now
has become stronger than ever. In fact, they are more united. They are more consolidated and united than ever. We have to go to a short break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We of course discussing the latest events that are happening across the world, and one of those events is the meeting of the defense ministers of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization that went on in China, in one of its coastal cities. Now, the member countries of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization got together to discuss the emerging scenario and how important it was to work together and turn to dialogue and mutual trust. A lot happened in that, and of course there was a huge issue that concerned India as well. But before we come to that, let's watch this package that has been prepared by our Chinese friends.
Conversations, all indicating an event highlighting unity and cooperation. The annual SCO meeting brings together defense ministers from all 10 member states, including 2 newcomers, Belarus and Iran. In a significant diplomatic moment, the defense ministers of India and Pakistan sit at one table for the first time since a recent military standoff over Kashmir. Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun chaired the meeting, welcoming his counterparts with a call for deeper defense cooperation. This year's meeting takes place at a time of mounting global instability, from conflicts in the Middle East to tensions in Eastern Europe. Here in Qingdao, SCO countries reaffirmed a shared commitment to safeguarding peace through dialogue and unity. An expert says despite differences in national positions, the presence of ministers under one roof reflects the organization's growing influence as a platform for constructive engagement and strategic coordination.
The SCO is currently the only multilateral security platform in the Eurasian region that combines collective defense with a non-confrontational approach and coordination capabilities. It plays a unique role in stabilizing the regional landscape, curbing destabilizing factors, and promoting peaceful dialogue in times of conflict.
As the rotating chair of the SCO, China has led a year of active engagement, joint initiatives, and dialogue.
These events provided a platform for dialogue and exchange among all member states, helping build consensus and amplify the SCO's voice on international and regional security issues.
From counter-terrorism to capacity building, member states have agreed to work together to uphold regional peace and build a more secure and cooperative future.
Ambassador Naela Chohan continues to join us for this segment as well. Ambassador Naela Chohan, why did the Indian delegation refuse to sign the SCO communique in terms of their demands to mention Pakistan?
You see, India has been playing a spoiler's role. I think there are several factors in it. Firstly, India has been part of Quad, which is American-led security dialogue in the region with Australia and Japan. It's 4 members. If they enter into security here, then they're really playing double, which has put them in a bad situation. Even in Pahalgam, you could see that they had no credibility. They sent their delegations abroad, which came back really without much impact. So they were hoping that they could play this game here and get some kind of recognition to their narrative, but it failed. And you can see that despite their not having signed the communique, the Chinese thought it was a very positive development that the defense ministers of the two countries sat together.
All right.
And it's a positive way because Pakistan is for peace and we did not
and we have time and again reiterated that Pakistan wants peace and it has always, pushed for peace in the region. But what are the implications of an episode such as this one for Pakistan's diplomatic posturing within the SCO?
I think it's very positive because it shows that the world didn't accept India's narrative. So actually it was another slap on India's face. Nobody was bothered. So they wanted a reference to Pahalgam in it. They wanted a reference to terrorism with Pakistan, which failed. So India again was a loser.
All right. Last question before we leave you, Ma'am Naela Chohan. The NATO summit is happening and the SCO summit. I mean, these are happening parallel and 2 powerhouses, are getting together with their respective members as well. Will we ever see an aligning of priorities between, say, the NATO and SCO and other organizations in the future in order to move towards global peace and prosperity?
Well, NATO's agenda is very different. NATO is basically North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was created to curtail Soviet expansion, which then became Russian expansion. Their focus is basically Ukraine. So when President Trump went, first thing he wasn't going, but when he went, he said, I'll only go on the condition that the NATO member countries agree to increase their contribution to NATO, so that America doesn't have to take the burden of fighting the Russians. Some countries agreed, but Spain, for example, was not very keen to increase its contribution. So NATO now has to redefine itself.
All right.
And they are going through a lot of introspection.
All right.
And the member countries there also have to decide whether they need collective security or whether they have to enhance their individual security, given how Mr. Trump has played it out.
All right.
But SCO is a regional cooperation. It's a Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and it's for regional security, it's for the welfare, it's more collective. The only spoiler you see is India. That created problem in the communique, but otherwise their vision is very different from NATO, and obviously the common member is Russia. In NATO they are working against Russia. In SCO, Russia is working with China and with regional countries to enhance security in the region, and Iran became the new member.
That's
so that is significant also.
That is significant, and that's an interesting perspective on how these organizations are also working. Thank you very much, Ambassador Naela Chohan, to have joined us. Let's come to our next story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns water. Now, we all know how India has put the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance following the Pahalgam false flag operation. Now, what it's doing, it's also, putting a lot of pressure on Bangladesh. Now, according to the Indian media reports, the 1996 India-Bangladesh Ganges Treaty that is set to expire in 2026 after completing 30 years will be up for reconsideration. Clause 12 of the Ganges Treaty states that the renewal will depend on mutual consent between both the countries. The treaty was meant, of course, to ensure fair distribution of water during dry season, especially around the Farakka bridge. But the fact is that India has now informed Bangladesh that it now requires more water for its development needs. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs states that before the Pahalgam attack, India was ready to extend the Ganges Treaty for another 30 years, but now circumstances have drastically changed. Bangladesh has expressed serious concern over this unilateral decision, India's water aggression that is driven by its war frenzy, and all of this could in the coming days or weeks or months ignite a new crisis in the South Asian region. We have been joined by Waqar Sherazi, who is our climate expert, and of course it's always a pleasure to talk to him because of his points of view. Thank you very much, Waqar Sherazi, to have joined us. How does India's unilateral suspension of the Indus Water Treaty by Pakistan, followed by attempts to renegotiate the Ganga Water Treaty with Bangladesh, reflect a growing pattern that we have seen and we understand of weaponizing water as a strategic tool by India?
It is not only weaponizing water, but it is about politicizing water as well. Control the tab and pressurize. So while the state becomes internally weak and the political parties want to gain mileage without any delivery in terms of protection to the rights of people, they take advantage and they take edge of these type of activities, which Indian government is reflecting at the moment. Not only its neighbor with like Pakistan, but with Bangladesh as well. With Pakistan, they were saying that despite Pakistan has surrendered 3 western rivers to India, India was not satisfied, and they were saying that we want to renegotiate it. And this has happened again with Bangladesh as well, while they are saying that we will be reducing the age of treaty, so reducing the margin, the already slim margin for Bangladesh to plan in terms of agriculture, in terms of water conservation, in terms of water channels and many other things. So it is controlling the tab and pressurizing the neighbor country to get them bend on their knees.
You know, another thing that I really want to understand is why all of a sudden post the Pahalgam false flag operation are they in need of more water, as they have informed Bangladesh that they want more water. That is why they want to renegotiate this treaty, because before they would have gone again for 30 years, but now post the all of a sudden post the Pahalgam false flag operation, they want to renegotiate. What tempts them to do that?
I have already shared that their internal control and their delivery in terms of because their commitments before the election were not fulfilled in any of the Indian state. So they are again entering into an election, and they have to divert the attention of the people from their compromised performance to the international agenda and to the external conflicts and pressures. I think that these tactics would no longer help in the globe, rather than these hydro intimidation which will create not only the internal weakness for any government, because this bayaniya is no longer
narrative.
Narrative is no longer successful to tempt the voters. They want their local problems to be resolved by the government. So I think that this intimidation will not only be a compromise tactic to gain popularity internally, but this will trigger the international conflicts as well with their neighbors.
Already they have triggered an international conflict with Pakistan, putting the Indus Water Treaty into an abeyance following a false flag operation. Anyways,
let me share one more thing. On one hand, India is pressurizing, intimidating both of its neighbors, Bangladesh and Pakistan, on waters. On the other hand, the Brahmaputra river, which comes from China in the name of Yarlung River, and on the run-off river, China is building a dam for 6 gigawatts. But there is no treaty between India and China on this river. Despite that, India has reservations. So on the one hand, they are showing another rule, and on the other hand, they are defining it on unethical grounds. So they don't have ethical grounds for receiving water and sharing water at the same time.
I mean, that is being made more and more apparent to the entire world. But now with that, India is demanding more water from the Ganges River, especially during the lean season. How should Pakistan and other regional countries, in your point of view, interpret this Indian aggressive push, especially in light of New Delhi's past incidents of violating international water sharing agreements?
Coincidentally, 2025 has seen that the international leadership, so-called leadership, is using unethical tactics, like Israel, like America did with Iran, and what we have been seeing in many of the conflicts around the globe. India is trying to become the local master, regional master, which they don't have capacity for, a big brother. They tried it in May, and they were badly failed. And now they have nothing to protect their narrative they tried to build as a regional power. So these are all the tactics. We have UN treaties, which we have Geneva treaties, which make the international countries bound to abide by the bilateral treaties they have with other countries. So I think that at the moment, Pakistan and Bangladesh take these bilateral treaties to international treaties, and they can raise them in UN, and they can raise their voice that India is using hydro intimidation to create unrest in the region, and this is threatening to the regional peace. And certainly it is in the domain of UN Security Council then.
All right, but this said, we've all seen how the UN Security Council has also worked in the past few years in important conflicts. Nevertheless, this reduction of this proposed new agreement from 30 years to 10 to 15 years with Bangladesh, in your point of view, doesn't it it intentionally wants to make the neighbors vulnerable, susceptible to countries such as India? Doesn't it also undermine the spirit of regional cooperation within ambits of organizations such as SAARC?
Say for example, Omar, Khalid, you and me are playing chess here, and I am the player who is having the right to redesign all the chessboard after 1 hour. So what would be your planning for winning the game? There would be no plan for that, because you do not know that after 1 hour what I am going to do. Same is the case with India. While they are reducing the time period of the treaty with Bangladesh, it means that they don't let Bangladesh to plan, they don't let Bangladesh to be sufficient in terms of water resources and in terms of planned water infrastructure. It means keeping your neighbors vulnerable so that you can keep on pressure and you can negotiate on your blackmailing terms. So I think that it is not only the unethical, but it is vulnerable for the overall peace of the world, as India, Pakistan and Bangladesh is an important region being called as a South Asian important bloc. So I think that the vulnerability is not only for the region and Bangladesh, but it is a global vulnerability again created by none other than India.
Speaking of vulnerabilities, Pakistan is extremely vulnerable when it comes to climate change. We are one of the most susceptible countries when it comes to that. And a recent report that has come by the NDMA's National Emergencies Operations Center issues a glacial lake outburst, a flood alert for the northern areas, including Gilgit-Baltistan. We've discussed GLOF many a times in the past as well. But now when there are around 160 tourists that have been evacuated from Atabad Lake, floodwaters entering hotels and rooms. What does this say about Pakistan's preparedness as far as the tourist heavy zones of Gilgit-Baltistan is concerned? Are we well prepared, especially in the wake of the 2022 episode of the floods?
Well, Omar, there are two reasons for GLOFs. The glacial lake outbursts
flood
and floods. The global reason is global warming, and we are contributing less than 1% to that, since we are producing less than 1%, 0.6% of the greenhouse gas emissions. The local reasons are deforestation and other measures that are not climate friendly by the local society. But there is another question, that do we have a master climate plan for Gilgit-Baltistan?
All right.
We don't have. At least I have not seen as yet. On the bank of a lake, a glacial lake, this hotel was approved under that master plan or not? This question is still unanswered.
All right.
So the disaster adaptation, disaster mitigation and early warning and disaster planning is not only about early warning or belated warning and evacuating the people. Why we were not aware that this can happen and an upper water source can affect this hotel? So had this been in the planning, this hotel would not have been given the license for their construction. At the 11th hour, 160 people were evacuated, not from the land side but from the lake side, and it shows our preparedness about and anticipation about any of the disasters. So we need much to do in this regard. The disaster mitigation and response is not only about the warning of disasters, it is about preparedness, mitigation, planning, early warning nevertheless, but it is one link of the chain.
All right. Let's talk about another link of that chain as well. How important or urgent is the threat posed by melting glaciers in Pakistan? We've discussed that, but I'd like again your point of view. In GB, especially when experts are warning that 80% of Pakistan's water comes and originates from these very glaciers.
This Kohe Hindu Kush, Karakoram and the third mountain range, they are called the third pole because they are having the largest repository of glaciers after after two poles of the world. It clearly means that these are our banks and our reservoirs for clean water in terms of water towers. While the global warming is affecting Pakistan and Asian region double than the rest of the world, it has been given by World Meteorological Organization report 2 days ago. As we have seen that Scandinavian countries are the countries which are less affected, less affected by any of the climate change on the globe. The different cases for Asian region and especially Pakistan, India and Bangladesh and the countries like that. So the glacial melting is faced by Pakistan as a challenge, but it is not created by Pakistan itself. So in this regard, none of the country on the globe can handle this climate change on a drastic and a massive level isolatedly. alone. So, in this regard, I think we will have to have international cooperation, not in terms of funds, but in terms of technical capacity, machinery and rest of the
Let's
things.
talk of technical capacity. Pakistan needs to use such events to push for international climate justice and green financing. We've done that at the COPs. Whether there's a reaction or eventual result-oriented action is another thing altogether. We can discuss that later. Nevertheless, how significant in that very, in the relation of all of this, how significant is the 10 billion rupees green financing deal between the Ministry of Climate Change and the NCGCL to promote climate-smart entrepreneurship, especially for youth and the women-led startups in Pakistan? Do you feel this could lead to more cognizant understanding on how to deal with things? As you said, we need to understand what to do and how to mitigate ourselves under such circumstances.
I'm going to sound a bit political, but the arrangement of funds internationally are all about the political economy, how the financial decisions are taken by the international community. Yesterday, the NATO has agreed that they would be providing at least 5% of their gross domestic product for NATO alliance. It calculates in multi-billion dollars. But when it comes to the climate mitigation and response and the climate finance, the international community is always on the back foot.
True.
It means that because of the political economy, their intention and their priority is not about the climate change and mitigation the climate change. Why? Because they are not the front line countries affected by the climate change. We are the countries facing the music right at the moment, but it will come to them on a later stage.
All right.
So, with this regard, while we can focus on internal capacity of the people by providing training and disaster preparedness in terms of the machinery and the planning, and the localized response by the youth and the female population, which helps in afforestation and preservation of water and reduction of local temperatures and biodiversity. But this cannot be done without international cooperation. So,
That
we
is
can
so true.
help with the local
But
remedies.
I mean, that is what is also happening. This is one step in the right direction. I hope the other countries also realize Pakistan's susceptibility and move in the right direction, because Pakistan has time and again said at all the COPs, and I don't want to go into the details, but climate financing, climate justice are two important things that Pakistan needs to deal with it. Thank you very much, Waqar Sherazi sahab, to have joined us. Last story concerns Bezos, who we all know as the founder of Amazon. He and his journalist fiance Lauren Sanchez have arrived in Venice to take part in their wedding rituals. But what has happened on the side of that, although it's going to be a 3-day lavish ceremony, a lot of people across from the world are coming, a lot of important people are going to be there. Nevertheless, this has also drawn protests by groups who view it as a sign of the growing disparity between the haves and the have-nots, which of course means that there's a certain disparity that is being shown and a certain inclination that is being shown to this wedding, putting aside the others who are there, whether they be the tourists, whether they be the locals of the region. Small-scale protests unfurling anti-Bezos banners on iconic Venetian sites have been seen. We've seen that in the pictures in the parallel window. Greenpeace has also joined these protests on Monday, and the British group Everyone Hates Elon, which has smashed Tesla vehicles to protest Elon Musk, also have unfurled a giant banner in the St. Mark's squares to protest these tax breaks that are purportedly given to billionaires. There needs to be space. I mean, there needs to be no difference when it comes, as I said, between the haves and the have-nots, between the billionaires and the locals or the not so rich people. I think it's time we moved in the right direction. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.